South Africa's top squash players were given the opportunity of earning valuable PSA World Ranking points on home courts recently when the Parkview Squash Centre hosted the IronMan 4x4 Grand Prix, the first PSA closed satellite tournament in South Africa.
This is a very important tournament. The world ranking structure has changed slightly. So all of the young players in South Africa that would like to take part on the world tour need events like this to get points to be able to get into any other events that they might play. So in the past, South African young players have been spending an average of 20,000 Rand to get to a tournament that's not in South Africa. But now we have the opportunity to convert our tournaments that we currently have to PSA satellite events, and that way they can get points here in South Africa.
For close on 4 decades, the Parkview Squash Centre has been the premier squash venue in Johannesburg, and under the watchful eye of former top PSA pro and national champion Craig van der Walt, the facility provides players with world-class courts in a tournament that for many young players is the entry point to the world of professional squash.
We do work hard to keep them because, at this level of play, the player safety is paramount. So the floors and having a solid floor that's properly sprung and not slippery means that the players have reduced risk of any slipping and injuring themselves. And we work hard. We clean twice a day. We've got great backing from our owners to make sure that we can keep the maintenance up and have this place in pristine condition to host events like this. And this is a showcase event. This is the first of its kind in South Africa because the format of the PSA World Ranking Tour changed on the 1st of August. So in the very first month, we've got this tournament in South Africa, and this is meant for us to be able to show all the other tournaments what's possible next year. And hopefully next year we can have a circuit of 10 of this kind of tournament, which will really be a great benefit to our players.
The tournament would not have taken place were it not for the commitment and support of a loyal sponsor. IronMan 4x4 are not new to the sport of squash or Parkview Squash Centre, but they were open to the idea of supporting a tournament as important as the Grand Prix.
Well, this sponsor, IronMan 4x4, has been with us for a number of years, and they were amenable to adapting this tournament to be part of the world ranking circuit so that our players can explore their future. Our players are spending almost no money coming to tournaments locally, and it's been prohibitive to get players started in South Africa with the great expense of travelling overseas and going to tournaments abroad. But if we have a circuit of these kind of tournaments next year, our players will be able to make that start, and we'll hopefully lift the whole standard of squash in South Africa by doing that.
IronMan 4x4, as a four-wheel drive company, we're always keen and always looking for opportunity to get involved in any event that specifically targets the upliftment of individuals and of community, and we, especially this year, it is just such a tournament. I mean, it's fantastic.
The 16-man draw saw 5 members of the South African Country District squad that finished second to Central Gauteng at the recent Jarvis Cup Interprovincial Tournament played at the same venue. The top 2 seeds were Salming ambassadors Christo Potgieter and number 2 seed JP Brits. Potgieter eased past Theo Palinomi in the first round and was a straight game winner over Pierre van der Merwe 11-5, 11-9, 11-4 in the second round. He then earned a place in the final with an 11-4, 11-8, 11-4 win over Dylan Groenewald. Brits began his path to the final with an 11-6, 11-love, 11-7 win over Joshua van der Walt. Zimbabwe's Blessing Moati was next up and offered a little more resistance before Brits won 11-6, 11-7, 11-9. In the semi-finals, Gary Naidu was the man who was beaten in 3 games, 11-2, 11-5, 11-6. Potgieter and Brits are good friends, having spent many years training and travelling together, so they know each other's games very well. But they put aside their friendship to get down to the business of earning prize money and very valuable PSA ranking points. The rallies were long, as befits a match between the country's 2 top players. Both tried to draw the other to the front of the court and expose the backcourt before driving deep to the corners. Brits, who reached the quarter-finals of the recent Growth Point South African Open, was able to control the key points and strode into a 2-game-to-love lead, courtesy of his good exploitation of the court space. He won the first game 11-5 and then the second 11-6. 31-year-old Potgieter was also a quarter-finalist in the South African Open. He fought hard in the third game and pushed Brits all the way. But it was the number 2 seed Brits who won the Central Gauteng Open in April who managed to close out the game 12-10 and take the match 11-5, 11-6, 12-10 to become the first IronMan 4x4 Grand Prix champion.
I'm very happy with the way I played. I've worked with my coach on especially good decision making on court, and I think this tournament I really it made a big difference, and I made sure that I stick to my plan, and since the first round until the final I just made sure I stick to the type of game I wanted to play, and especially in the final today I had a way I wanted to play, and I made sure that I stayed disciplined with that game. I played really tight and disciplined squash, and I really took control of the game by playing accurately, and then whenever the opportunity came up I took the ball early, and I still played it tight to the front, and that opened the court up a lot, and then I was just hitting into the spaces quickly, and I think eventually Christo got himself out of position a bit too much, and it opened up for me a little bit. From this tournament I got 30 points, and that's above my average, and at the moment I'm ranked about 156 in the world. So at the end of this month those points get added to my world ranking, and I would probably shoot to about 140, maybe somewhere in the 130s, and that makes a big difference. That helps me when I enter for bigger tournaments to get into those tournaments and make even bigger jump. So I'm very, very happy for Craig for organising these events, and for IronMan for sponsoring it, because it makes life much easier for us as professionals.
27-year-old Brits is meticulous about his preparations ahead of every match. He leaves nothing to chance, as he wants to give himself the best possible chance of winning every time he steps onto the court. He also has enlisted the help of a conditioning coach, Wayne Taylor.
Your match starts a few hours before the match, actually. You must make sure you've had a really good night's sleep, your diet is correct, your hydration is good, and that's something that Wayne has also helped me a lot with, making sure that the timing of that is correct. So by the time you step on court, you're fully hydrated and mentally prepared for your match, that you can just go and execute your game plan and the things that you've been working on the court during the week and in the gym. So it's definitely a thing that goes on, and then you have to do your match analysis and see where you can make better decisions on court. So all of that is all things that you do extra that's not on court, and that's something that I personally want to work hard on, so that it makes me more professional and brings out the best out of me.
Wayne Taylor is a New Zealander who's developed an international reputation as a top-class strength and conditioning coach with a particular emphasis on rugby. However, he has experience working with male and female athletes from a wide variety of sports.
Past 3 months I've been working really hard with Wayne, and the movement patterns that we've been working on has really made me quite strong. I've always been a fit athlete, but I can really feel the difference in the movement that I do, and getting quick in and out from the shot that I play, and being strong at the end of the games as well. So at the end of the day with squash, if you move well, you're going to be early in position and play a good shot, and that's going to be give you consistency in your shots, and then obviously consistency in your game. So that's one of the things I'll keep working on week in, week out, as well as with my coach on the squash as well.
JP Brits has a busy schedule in the next few months, fitting in his training sessions with Wayne between squash and recovery sessions, and coaching stints with Centurion Junior Squash, all of which will change soon as he travels to the United States and Canada to play in a series of PSA events.
I originate from New Zealand. I was involved heavily with New Zealand rugby and junior All Blacks and the women's team. And then Dick Muir brought me to South Africa. I worked with the Lions for 3 years, head of training and medical. And then I spent a couple of years in Japan with a private club, then the Sunwolves and Japan national team, before coming back to South Africa. Worked with a variety of different athletes, from boxing to top female hockey players, and now squash players, cyclists. Yeah. Enjoy the challenge. What I'm noticing more in the top athletes, whether they're cyclists or squash players, hockey players, is that they're very, very good at their sport, but when you isolate them in movement patterns, they're very poor, which I'm getting a lot of top athletes that are explosive and quick at 27, 28 years of age, including JP, with lower back pain or problems with their hip flexors because they have very poor pelvic stability and core activation. So those movement patterns are critical. We don't train muscles, we train movements, and then everything falls in line now. JP's, when he first came to me, he had a lot of pelvic instability, and his core activation wasn't good. And the movement patterns that he was going through, and he was equally as frustrated with those, were just a lot of generating power off a single leg, which is what squash players do. So he can't spend a lot of time in the squat rack. He needs to be on his feet and needs to be generating power off a single leg and stabilising his pelvis. And we've worked really, really hard at that. And now his movement patterns are strong. We're now superset that with power exercises and explosive, which is now carrying over to the court. I generally see JP for an hour 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But we have a good relationship where we manage his 24 hours. So the good thing about JP is proactive with his communication. So he'll send me voice messages and things about his recovery, what he's done, and everything's recorded in a training diary. So he knows exactly what he should be doing when he's not with me. And he's the ultimate professional. If we're training at 10, he'll be there at 9:30, roll his muscles out, prepare his body. So the hour I have with him, I'm coaching. I'm not doing the stuff that he could be doing himself. And the idea about being a professional athlete is to become your own personal muscle mechanic, rather than having to rely on other people, and get as much information as you can to become better and better at that. So we train out of My Fitness 3 times a week, which is CrossFit 152. It's a great setup. We have the space we need over there as well. And JP comes from Pretoria, and we get our work done, yeah.
And we wish JP Brits all the very best with his career on the PSA. Here's hoping he can follow in the footsteps of his coach Craig van der Walt, and more recently, former top South African Steve Coppinger, who reached a career high of number 14 on the PSA rankings.
The big thing with JP is he's going to be travelling on the world circuit. So what we've been trying to do is set up the things that he needs to be doing, and then also fine-tuning what's his game week look like. So we had a big volume on Monday this week. We tapered into Tuesday and Wednesday, and then he's now giving us feedback. He felt really good on the court. So what that gives us is when he travels, he'll have a travel plan to maximise his recovery, managing time zones, his hydration, etc. But also then how do we structure his week into performance? And what we've seen this week is starting to be a template for JP that when he lands somewhere, he knows what his week should look like to get the results that he got on the court today. And that's where we're creating Smarter Athlete. And that's driven by the athlete. It can't be me whipping him, because I only see him a certain amount of time, and when he's overseas, he needs to manage that himself and just be proactive in keeping in touch with me.
On the 8th of September, I'm going to North America. I'm playing 2 events in Canada, the Nash Cup and the Aspen Cup. And then I go to Texas for the Texas Open. So I'm playing 3 PSA tournaments in September. And then I'm finding out in September which events I will be playing in October, but probably 2 more events after my North America trip. Personally, I just want to play the best squash that I can play, and I believe the results will come. I know that I'm a top class player, and the opponents I'm playing against is not out of my reach, and I know if I have to focus on my game and getting physically and mentally better, and the results will come in the tournaments. But definitely making sure I get into the top 100 before the end of the season, and then that's a good platform for 2019 to shoot up the ranks from there.